When the monster met the Shifu know what the problem with galactic civilization is. Everyone assumes they understand humans. Oh, sure, they've read the files. They know we're the new kids on the block. Barely 3 centuries since first contact. Still figuring out which end of a plasma rifle doesn't explode in your face. Most species figure we're either harmless cargo haulers or psychotic warmongers, depending on which propaganda feeds they've been binge watching. What they don't get is that humans are weird. Not in the, oh, they only have 4 limbs that way make Centauran tourists point and giggle. No, we're weird in ways that don't show up in official species assessments. Ways that only matter when things go sideways. Take Chef Anya, for instance. Anya was the kind of human woman who looked like she'd been forged from steel and stubbornness. 5'9", built like a bodybuilder, but with an odd grace, her chestnut hair neatly tied back. She had the sort of face that made customs officials automatically assume she was smuggling something, even when she was just carrying a bag of legitimate space pineapples. The thing is, Anya was really just the ship's captain, and if you believe that, I've got a lovely piece of swampland on Kepler 442b to sell you. The Galactic Wanderer was what you'd charitably call a working vessel. Less charitably, you'd call it a rust bucket held together by prayers and industrial-grade bonding strips. She was a mid-range cargo hauler, the kind of ship that made honest livings for honest beings willing to haul legitimate goods between legitimate ports, and not ask too many questions about why the cargo manifest was written in disappearing ink. Captain Zorak was a Xylosian, which meant he looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a tax accountant and given the result anxiety medication. His chitinous carapace was a nervous shade of blue-green that shifted to yellow when he was stressed, which was approximately 73% of the time. The other 27% he was unconscious. Anya, Zorak chirped, his mandibles clicking in what passed for agitation among his species. The crew is complaining about the food again. Anya looked up from the industrial-grade protein synthesizer she'd been coaxing into producing something that resembled actual food. The machine was older than some planetary governments, and had about as much personality as a particularly stubborn boulder. What's the complaint this time, Captain? Thornak says the Nutripaste tastes like the despair of 1,000 dying suns. Zorak's mandibles clicked faster, and that's a direct quote. He used the formal declension for cosmic tragedy. Thornax is a drama queen, Anya said, giving the synthesizer a percussive adjustment that would have been called percussive maintenance in less sophisticated circles. Tell him if he wants fine dining, he should have signed up for a luxury liner, not a cargo hauler. I tried that, Zorak sighed. He responded with a 17-verse epic poem about the crushing weight of culinary disappointment. 17 verses? Anya whistled low. That's impressive, actually. Most people give up after the 5th verse about flavor profiles. The truth was, Anya took a certain professional pride in making edible food out of the ship's supplies. It was like a puzzle. How do you make something that won't actively poison 7 different species using ingredients that came from a supply depot that listed probably food safe as a selling point? Most ship's cooks would have given up and just told the crew to deal with it. Anya wasn't most ship's cooks. She was currently working on what she optimistically called Tuesday Surprise, a protein-based dish that incorporated elements from 3 different food traditions and would hopefully not trigger any major allergic reactions. The surprise part was that nobody, including Anya, was entirely sure what it would taste like until it was done. Look, Captain, Anya said, adjusting the synthesizer settings. I'll see what I can do, but we're 3 days out from Kepler station, and the supplies are getting low. I'm working miracles with what we've got. Zorak's mandibles slowed to a worried clicking. Do your best, Anya. The crew is getting restless, and with the route we're taking through the neutral zone. He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew the neutral zone was where ships went to disappear. It was the galactic equivalent of a bad neighborhood. The kind of place where even the emergency beacons filed insurance claims before responding to distress calls. But it was also the fastest route to Kepler station. And speed meant profit. And profit meant they could afford to fix the life support system that had been making ominous wheezing sounds for the past 2 weeks. Anya nodded and went back to her work. The synthesizer hummed and clicked, processing whatever passed for food in the year 2387. Outside the galley's porthole, the stars stretched by in the familiar pattern of faster-than-light travel. Each point of light represented a world full of beings who probably had better food than whatever Anya was about to serve. It was a peaceful, ordinary moment on a peaceful, ordinary cargo run, which should have been the first sign that everything was about to go spectacularly wrong. The attack came during the third shift, when most of the crew was either asleep or pretending to be awake, while actually reading galactic romance novels. Anya was in the galley putting the finishing touches on what she decided to call Shepherd's Delight, if shepherds herded synthetic protein analogs. The first sign of trouble was the way the ship's artificial gravity hiccuped. Not the usual, "Oh, we're probably going to die" hiccup that came from the aging generators, but a sharp, violent jolt that sent Enya's carefully prepared meal sliding across the prep counter. The second sign was the way the lights flickered from white to red, accompanied by an alarm that sounded like a Centauran death wail being processed through a broken speaker system. The third sign was Captain Zorak's voice over the intercom, speaking in the kind of carefully controlled tone that suggested he was either very calm or very close to panic. "All hands, prepare for boarding. Prepare. This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill." Anya looked at her ruined dinner inside. Well, that's just perfect. She'd been through boarding procedures before. Standard protocol was for all non-essential personnel to secure themselves in designated safe areas and wait for the all-clear. The ship's cook is definitely counted as non-essential personnel. The problem was Anya had never been very good at following standard protocol. Instead of heading for the safe room, she opened one of the galley storage lockers and pulled out what looked like a standard maintenance kit. To anyone watching, it would have seemed like a perfectly normal collection of tools for keeping a ship's galley running. Anyone watching would have been wrong. Anya had been a lot of things before she'd become a ship's cook. Some of them were even legal. The boarding clamps engaged with a sound like a giant metal insect trying to crack open a particularly stubborn nut. Anya could hear the whine of cutting tools through the hull, followed by the distinctive hiss of atmosphere equalizing. Then came the voices. "Secure the bridge. Watch for resistance." The universal translator made them sound like they were speaking perfect galactic standard, but Anya could hear the underlying hisses and growls. That meant these weren't exactly the friendly neighborhood welcome committee. Pirates. And from the sound of it, Kryllian pirates. Kryllians were what happened when evolution decided that sharks weren't quite terrifying enough and needed to be given opposable thumbs and a deep appreciation for violence. They were 7 feet tall, covered in scales that could deflect most small arms fire, and had enough teeth to stock a dental supply warehouse. They were also, Anya reflected, about to have a very bad day. The galley door burst open and 3 Kryllian pirates stormed in, their weapons drawn and their teeth gleaming in the red emergency lighting. They wore the kind of armor that suggested they took their piracy seriously. All black metal plates and intimidating spikes. "You!" The lead pirate snorted, pointing a plasma rifle at Anya. "Where's the cargo manifest?" Anya looked up from her maintenance kit, holding what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary wrench. "I'm sorry. Did you try knocking? Because I'm pretty sure there's a procedure for this sort of thing." The pirate's eyes narrowed. "You mock us, human? Oh, I wouldn't dream of it," Anya said, her voice carrying the kind of reasonable tone that suggested she was either very stupid or very dangerous. "I'm just saying politeness costs nothing. Your mother probably taught you that." The second pirate hissed something that the translator rendered as, "Should we kill him now?" "No," the leader said, his teeth clicking together in what might have been amusement. "We need the crew alive until we find the cargo. This one can join the others in the hold." Anya nodded thoughtfully. "That's probably for the best. I'd hate to miss the party." The wrench in her hand moved so fast that even enhanced Kryllian reflexes couldn't track it. One moment, it was hanging loosely at her side. The next it was buried in the throat of the lead pirate, who made a sound like a deflating balloon, and collapsed. The second pirate had just enough time to look surprised before Enya's other hand produced what definitely hadn't been in any maintenance kit. The blade was 8 inches of crystallized carbon, sharp enough to split molecules, and completely invisible to most security scanners. It slid between the pirate's armor plates like it was made of paper. The third pirate, to his credit, actually managed to raise his weapon before Anya reached him. The plasma rifle discharged, sending a bolt of superheated energy that would have vaporized whatever it hit. It hit the spot where Anya had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. The pirate found himself looking down at the same crystallized carbon blade now protruding from his chest. Anya's face was perfectly calm, like she was discussing the weather or the optimal temperature for serving Nutriast. "Sorry about that," Anya said, as the pirate collapsed. "Nothing personal." The whole thing had taken maybe 10 seconds. Anya looked at the bodies, then at the mess they'd made of her galley. The shepherd's delight, if shepherds herded synthetic protein analogs, was completely ruined, splattered across the walls along with other things that were significantly less appetizing. "Well," she said to no one in particular, "that's going to be a pain to clean up." She picked up the plasma rifle the third pirate had dropped, checked its charge, and headed for the door. Time to see how many more uninvited guests had decided to crash the party. The corridor outside the galley was a symphony of chaos. Emergency lights cast everything in hellish red. Alarms wailed like banshees with performance anxiety, and somewhere in the distance, Anya could hear the distinctive sound of Kryllian pirates having spirited discussions about property redistribution. Anya moved through the ship with the kind of quiet efficiency that came from years of practice in places where making noise was a career-ending decision. The plasma rifle was a comfortable weight in her hands, and the maintenance kit on her belt contained enough surprises to make a very bad day for anyone who thought they were dealing with an ordinary ship's cook. She found the first group of pirates in the main cargo hold, where they were busy arguing over a crate of what appeared to be Centauran silk. There were 4 of them, and they were having the kind of heated discussion that involved a lot of tooth-baring and aggressive posturing. "Told you we should have hit the passenger liner instead," one was saying, his scales reflecting the red emergency lighting, like a disco ball having a seizure. "Cargo haulers never have anything good." "The passenger liner had escort frigates," another replied. "You want to explain to the clan mother why half the crew is floating in space." Anya stepped around the corner, the plasma rifle trained on the group. "Excuse me, gentlemen. I hate to interrupt, but I think you might be in the wrong place." The pirate spun around, weapons rising. But Anya was already moving. The plasma rifle discharged once, twice, 3 times. Each shot placed with surgical precision. The 4th pirate managed to get off a shot that went wide, scorching a bulkhead. Anya's return shot didn't go wide. "Thanks for playing," Anya said, stepping over the bodies. "Better luck next time." She moved on, following the sound of voices toward the bridge. The ship's layout was burned into her memory. After 6 months aboard the Galactic Wanderer, she could navigate her corridors blindfolded and probably drunk. The bridge was where she found the real party. Captain Zorak was secured to his command chair with what appeared to be industrial-grade restraints. His carapace was a color that suggested extreme stress mixed with existential dread. The bridge crew chief engineer Kale, navigator Xylos, and communications officer Rika were huddled together under the watchful eyes of 2 more pirates. The pirate leader was a massive Kryllian who looked like he'd been carved from black stone and exuded a really bad attitude. His armor was more elaborate than the others, covered in spikes and trophies that suggested he'd made a career out of making other people's lives significantly shorter. "Captain," the pirate leader was saying, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from eating smaller predators for breakfast, "you will provide the access codes for your cargo manifest, or I will begin removing your crew members, 1 limb at a time." Zorak's mandibles clicked rapidly. "I've already told you. The manifest is standard commercial cargo, nothing valuable. Then you won't mind if we verify that for ourselves." The pirate leader gestured to one of his subordinates, who raised a particularly nasty-looking weapon. The energy blade hummed with the kind of sound that suggested it could cut through pretty much anything, including inconvenient crew members. "Last chance, Captain." That was when Anya decided to make her entrance. "You know," she said, stepping onto the bridge with the casual air of someone arriving at a dinner party. I'm starting to take this personally. Every head turned towards her. The pirates' expressions ranged from surprise to confusion to the kind of professional interest that suggested they were calculating optimal firing angles. "Ah," the pirate leader said, his teeth gleaming in the red light. "The ship's cook. How convenient. I was just explaining to your captain that cooperation would be in everyone's best interest." "I heard," Anya said, the plasma rifle held casually at her side. "Thing is, I've got a bit of a problem with people who interrupt dinner service." The pirate leader's laugh was like grinding metal. "You think you can threaten us, human? There are 6 of us and 1 of you." Anya looked around the bridge, counting. "Actually, I make it 8 of you total. Well, 8 when we started. Now, it's more like 4. The pirates exchanged glances. The leader's expression shifted from amusement to something approaching concern. "You're lying. Am I?" Anya smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. "Why don't you call down to the cargo hold? Or maybe check in with the team you sent to the galley?" The pirate leader's hand moved toward his communicator. Anya watched him try to raise the other teams, watched his expression change as he received nothing but static in response. "What are you?" the leader asked, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect or fear. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. "I'm the ship's cook," Anya said reasonably. "I make food. I keep the galley clean. I follow recipes." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "And I really don't like it when people interrupt my work." The bridge erupted into motion. The pirates moved with the kind of speed that had kept their species at the top of the galactic food chain for millennia. But Anya moved like she'd been born for this moment. The plasma rifle bucked in her hands, sending bolts of energy that found their targets with mechanical precision. One pirate's weapon flew from his grasp, taking most of his hand with it. Another found himself on the receiving end of a shot that turned his armor into very expensive slag. The pirate leader was faster than Anya had expected. His return fire came close enough to singe the hair on Anya's arms. But close wasn't good enough. Anya rolled behind the navigation console, came up firing, and put 2 shots center mass into the leader's chest. The massive Kryllian staggered, his armor smoking, but didn't go down. "Impressive," the leader said, raising his own weapon, "but not impressive enough." That was when Anya remembered that she wasn't just carrying a plasma rifle. The crystallized carbon blade took the pirate leader in the side, sliding between armor plates with the kind of precision that came from years of practice. The leader's eyes went wide, looking down at the blade protruding from his ribs. "How?" he began. "Practice," Anya said, and twisted the blade. The pirate leader collapsed, his weapon clattering across the deck. The remaining pirates looked at their fallen leader, then at Anya, then at each other. The mathematics of the situation were becoming increasingly clear. "Anyone else want to discuss property redistribution?" Anya asked, pulling the blade free and wiping it clean on the leader's armor. "Because I've got a dinner service to prepare, and I'm running behind schedule." The surviving pirates looked at each other, then at the bodies of their comrades, then at Anya. Professional pirates were many things, but they weren't stupid. They could recognize a no-win scenario when it was holding a plasma rifle, and looked at them like they were ingredients in a recipe. We surrender," one of them said, his voice carrying the kind of defeated tone that suggested he was reviewing his career choices. "Smart," Anya said. "Captain, if you'd like to restrain our guests, I'll go check on the rest of the ship. Make sure we didn't miss anyone." Zorak's mandibles were clicking so fast, they were practically vibrating. "Anya, what? How did you?" "I'm a very dedicated cook," Anya said, shouldering the plasma rifle. "I take my responsibilities seriously." 20 minutes later, the Galactic Wanderer was secure. The surviving pirates were locked in the cargo hold. The bodies had been disposed of according to standard spacefaring protocols, and Anya was back in the galley surveying the damage. It was, she reflected, going to take a while to clean up. The crew had gathered in the common area, their expressions ranging from stunned to confused to the kind of professional curiosity that came from working with someone for 6 months and suddenly realizing you didn't know them at all. So, Chief Engineer Kale said, her tentacles twitching with barely contained nervous energy. Anyone else want to talk about what just happened? Navigator Xylos, who resembled a 7-foot-tall blue hedgehog with anger management issues, was staring at Anya like he'd just discovered the ship's cook was actually a small deity. She killed 8 pirates. 8. With a spanner and a carbon blade, not a kitchen knife. Anya corrected, settling into her usual chair at the common room table. Crystallized carbon blade. Very different construction principles. That's not the point. Xylos's spines were bristling. The point is that our cook just did his job. Captain Zorak interrupted, his mandibles clicking in what might have been approval. She protected the ship and crew. That's what matters. Communications Officer Rika, who looked like a cross between a butterfly and a computer terminal, was running rapid calculations on her personal tablet. According to Kryllian military records, that pirate leader was Grar, the bone collector. He had a bounty of 50,000 credits on his head. Anya looked up from the tea she'd been brewing. Really? That's not bad for a day's work. Not bad. Kale's tentacles were now actively writhing. Anya, that's more than most people make in a year, and you killed him with a carbon blade. Crystallized carbon blade, Anya said again, patiently. And technically, it was the plasma rifle that killed him. The blade was just for emphasis. The crew exchanged glances. There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the ship's humming engines and the occasional click of Zorak's mandibles. Anya, the captain said finally, I think we need to have a conversation. Anya sipped her tea. It was actually pretty good. She'd managed to find some real leaves at the last supply station instead of the synthetic stuff that tasted like regret and artificial flavoring. About what? About who you really are. I'm the ship's cook, Anya said, her voice carrying the kind of patient tone that suggested she'd had this conversation before. I make food. I keep the galley clean. I follow recipes. And you kill pirates, Xylos added. Only when they interrupt dinner service, Anya replied. I'm very serious about mealtimes. Captain Zorak's carapace shifted to a thoughtful shade of blue-green. Anya, in 6 months, you've never once mentioned any military background. Your personnel file says you worked in restaurant management before joining the crew. That's right. Restaurant management doesn't typically include combat training. Anya considered this. Depends on the restaurant. The crew stared at her. She stared back, sipping her tea with the kind of calm that suggested she was either completely insane or completely in control of the situation. Look, Anya said finally, appreciate the curiosity. But my past is my past. What matters is that I do my job. I do it well, and I don't cause problems for the crew. She paused, then added, well, usually. What about the bounty? Rika asked. 50,000 credits is a lot of money. Ship's fund, Anya said, without hesitation. Use it for repairs, crew bonuses, whatever. I didn't sign up for bounty hunting. Kale's tentacles stopped writhing. You're just giving it away? I'm giving it to the crew, Anya corrected. We're all in this together. There was another long silence. Then Captain Zorak's mandibles clicked in what was definitely approval. Very well, the captain said. Your past is your business, Anya. But I want you to know that whatever you were before, you're part of this crew now, and we take care of our own. Anya smiled, and for the first time since the attack, it was a completely genuine expression. Thanks, Captain. I appreciate that. Now, Zorak continued. About dinner, Anya looked at the mess the pirates had made of her galley, then at the crew's expectant faces. Right. Anyone know if we have any more protein synthesis compound? Because I'm thinking tonight calls for something special. What did you have in mind? Kale asked. Anya's smile turned slightly wicked. Victory stew. It's an old family recipe. 3 days later, the Galactic Wanderer docked at Kepler Station without further incident. The pirates had been turned over to station security. The bounty had been processed, and Anya had managed to clean the galley well enough to resume regular meal service. Word of the incident had spread through the station's gossip networks with the kind of efficiency that made faster-than-light communication look sluggish. By the time the crew made it to Manny's bar, the kind of establishment that served drinks to every species in the galaxy and asked very few questions about how they'd earned their credits, they were practically celebrities. "So, it's true?" asked Trixna, the Delton bartender, her 4 eyes wide with excitement. "Your cook really killed 8 pirates? She's very dedicated," Captain Zorak said, his mandibles clicking with what might have been pride. "Takes her work seriously." Anya was sitting at the end of the bar nursing a drink that was either beer or industrial solvent, depending on your perspective. She'd been approached by no fewer than 6 different beings who wanted to hear the story, buy her drinks, or offer her employment opportunities that probably violated several dozen galactic laws. "Anya," Kale said, sliding onto the stool next to her. "I've been thinking." "Dangerous habit," Anya replied, but she was smiling. "No, seriously, you saved our lives today. All of us. And we barely know anything about you." Anya took a sip of her drink, which definitely tasted more like industrial solvent than beer. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Kale said. "Where you're from. What you did before. How you learned to," she gestured vaguely, "do what you did." Anya was quiet for a long moment, watching the bubbles in her drink. Around them, the bar hummed with conversation in a dozen different languages. The universal translator rendered it all into comprehensible noise. "I'm from Earth," she said finally. "Born in a place called Detroit. Ever heard of it?" Kale shook her head. "It's a city that used to build things. Cars. Mostly. Then it stopped building things and started. Well, it got complicated." Enya's expression grew distant. "My father worked in the auto plants until they closed. My mother was a teacher until the schools ran out of money. I was 16 when I realized there weren't going to be any opportunities for someone like me in the traditional sense. So, what did you do?" "I got creative," Anya said. "Found work that paid well and didn't ask too many questions. Learned skills that weren't taught in schools. Met people who operate in the space between what was legal and what was necessary." Kale's tentacles curled thoughtfully. "You were a criminal." "I was a survivor," Anya corrected. "There's a difference sometimes." "And the restaurant management?" Anya laughed. And there was something truly warm in the sound. "That part was true. After I decided I wanted a different kind of life, I worked in kitchens. Started as a prep cook, worked my way up. Turns out running a kitchen isn't that different from running a crew. Both require organization, timing, and the ability to work with people who might not always agree with you. And the combat training, like I said, Detroit was complicated. Some skills, once you learn them, you never really forget." Anya finished her drink and put the glass down. "But that's all in the past. I like cooking. I like being useful. I like working with people who trust me to do my job." Kale was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Do you miss it? The excitement?" Anya considered the question. "You know what I miss? The feeling of doing something that mattered. Of being part of something bigger than myself. And the funny thing is, I get that feeling now. Taking care of the crew. Keeping everyone fed and healthy. Being part of a team that works together. It's not the same kind of excitement. But it's better." "Better how?" "Because nobody has to get hurt for me to feel like I'm making a difference." Anya smiled. "Well, usually." From across the bar, Captain Zorak's voice carried over the crowd. "Anya, get over here. Trixna wants to hear about your victories." Anya stood up, straightening her jacket. "Duty calls. Can't keep the fans waiting." As she walked toward the crowd that had gathered around the captain, Kale watched her go. The ship's cook, who'd killed 8 pirates with a spanner and a blade, was now enthusiastically explaining the proper seasoning techniques for synthetic protein to a group of fascinated aliens. It was, she reflected, a very human thing to do. The next morning, as the Galactic Wanderer prepared to depart Kepler Station, Anya was back in her galley, taking inventory of their new supplies. The bounty money had allowed them to restock with actual food, instead of the usual suspects, and she was planning something special for the crew's first meal of the new voyage. Captain Zorak found her there, methodically organizing spices with the kind of attention to detail that suggested she took her work very seriously indeed. "Anya," the captain said, his mandibles clicking in what had become a familiar pattern of approval. "I wanted to thank you for what you did, for what you've done." Anya looked up from a container of Rigelian pepper seeds. "Just doing my job, Captain." "No," Vorik said, his tone serious. "You went far beyond your job. You saved lives. You protected the ship." I protected my crew," Anya interrupted. "My family. That's what families do." The captain's carapace shifted to a warm shade of blue. "Yes, that's exactly what families do." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, surrounded by the familiar hum of the ship's engines and the subtle vibration that meant they were preparing for departure. "I've been thinking about our next route," Zorik said. "We could take the safe passage through the trade lanes, adding a few days to the journey, but minimizing the risk of complications." Anya smiled. "Captain, with respect, I didn't sign up for the safe route. I signed up to cook for the crew of a working ship. That means going where the work is, risks and all, even if it means more pirates. Pirates have to eat too," Anya said, returning to her inventory. "And I've got some new recipes I'd like to try." Zorik's mandibles clicked in what was definitely amusement. "You're an unusual human, Anya." "I'm exactly the kind of human you need," Anya replied. "Someone who takes care of his crew, keeps the galley running, and doesn't let uninvited guests ruin dinner service. And if we run into more trouble?" Anya picked up a chef's knife, testing its edge against her thumb. The blade was sharp enough to split hairs, and she handled it with the kind of casual expertise that suggested she'd been doing this for a very long time. "Then they'll discover that interrupting a chef during meal preparation is a very bad idea," she said, sliding the knife back into its holder. "Some traditions are sacred." As the Galactic Wanderer pulled away from Kepler Station and headed back into the darkness between stars, Anya began preparations for the evening meal. She worked with the methodical precision of someone who understood that feeding people was about more than just nutrition. It was about taking care of them, showing them they mattered, creating moments of comfort and connection in the vast emptiness of space. She was, after all, the ship's cook, and she took her job very seriously indeed. Epilogue 6 months later, the Galactic Wanderer had developed something of a reputation in the shipping lanes. Not for the cargo they carried or the routes they flew, but for the fact that pirates seemed to have an unfortunate tendency to disappear whenever they targeted the ship. The crew had grown used to Enya's unique approach to hospitality. They'd also grown used to the fact that their ship's cook had become something of a legend in the less trustworthy corners of the galaxy. "Anya," Navigator Xylo said, poking his head into the galley, "we're getting hailed by a ship that claims to be having engine trouble and needs assistance." Anya looked up from the marinade she'd been preparing for the evening's protein course. "Engine trouble, huh? What kind of ship?" "Fast courier, heavily armed, flying with transponders off." "Ah." Anya wiped her hands on her apron. "The kind of engine trouble that involves boarding parties and demands for cargo manifests. That's what the captain thinks." Anya nodded thoughtfully. "Tell the captain I'll be right there." "And Xylos." "Yeah. Make sure the crew knows dinner might be delayed. I hate it when the schedule gets interrupted." As Xylos hurried back to the bridge, Anya opened her storage locker and pulled out her maintenance kit. The tools gleamed in the galley's lights, each one carefully maintained and perfectly suited for its intended purpose. She straightened her apron, checked her reflection in the polished surface of the protein synthesizer, and headed for the bridge. There was work to do. After all, she was the ship's cook, and some people were about to learn that meal service was sacred.